Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is video 11 of React interview and question series. So today I'm going to cover API calls and data fetching, one of the most practical topics in any React interview because almost every real app talk to a server. So we have 14 question where API calls should actually lib, handling loading and error states, race conditions, canceling request, retries, caching, pagination, infinite scrolling, polling, and WebSockets for real-time updates. So let's get into it. Question number one: where should API calls be made in a React app? API calls actually go in one of the three places inside useEffect for a data tied to a render, inside an event handler for a user triggered actions like a form submit, or inside a dedicated data fetching layer like 10 stack query, which handles most of the things for automatically. How do you handle loading, error, and success states? You typically track three status: loading, error, and success, either as separate values or combined into a single status field. A single status avoids impossible combination like loading and error both being true at the same time. How do you prevent race conditions in API calls? A race condition happens where an older request resolves after a newer one, overwriting fresh data with stale data. The fix is tracking which request is the latest using an ignore flag or abort controller, or just letting a library like 10 stack query handle it for you. How do you cancel an API request? The standard way is about controller create one, pass its signal into fetch and call about in your cleanup function. This generally cancels the network request, not just its result. Axios support that exact same signal if you are using that instead of fetch. How do you handle retries for failed request? So retries means automatically reattempting a failed request, usually with exponential backoff, waiting a bit longer each time instead of hammering the server instantly. Most data fetching libraries like 10 stack query handle this with a simple option right out of the box. How do you cache API responses? Caching means storing a response after fetching it, uh, keyed by the request, so a repeat request can be served instantly instead of hitting the network again. This is exactly what libraries like 10 stack query and RTK query do automatically without you writing any caching logic yourself. Oh, now the next question: what is still data? So stale data is case data that might no longer match what's actual on the server. It is not necessarily wrong to show. Often it's shown immediately while the library quickly checks for a fresh version in the background. Libraries let you configure exactly how long data stays considered fresh. What is optimistic UI? So optimistic UI means updating the interface immediately, assuming a request will succeed instead of waiting for the server to confirm. It makes the app feel instant. If the request does fail, you just roll the UI back to what it was before. How do you implement pagination? Pagination means fetching data in fixed size chunks, a specific page and page size instead of everything at once. You track the current page in state and fetch fresh data whenever the user moves to a different page. Offset based versus cursor based pagination. What's the difference? Offset based pagination uses a page number or a skip count, simple, but it can skip or duplicate items if data changes between requests. Cursor based pagination uses a pointer to the last item you saw, which stays consistent even as data changes. That's why most large scale feeds use cursors instead. How do you implement infinite scrolling? Infinite scrolling detects when the user nears the bottom of the page, usually with an inspection observer watching a market element, and automatically fetches the next page. The key difference from regular pagination: new results get appended to the existing list, not swapped in over it. How do you handle polling? Polling means repeatedly fetching the same endpoint on a set interval to catch change changes over time. If you are doing it manually, make sure to clear that interval in your effects cleanup. Most data fetching libraries have polling built in directly as a simple question. How do you manage WebSocket connections in React? A WebSocket connection is usually opened once inside a use effect with an empty array, and you listen for incoming messages to update state as they arrive. Just like any other effect that sets something up, you need to close the connection in closeup or it keeps running after the component is gone. How do you handle real-time updates in a React app? So real-time updates usually come from one of three approaches: WebSockets for two-way communication, server send events for simpler one-way updates from the server, or polling as a fallback that works everywhere, just with a bit more delay and overhead. So this is a slide, last slide. So just wrap the video 11. We covered where API calls belongs, handling, loading and error states, race conditions, cancellation, retries, caching and stale data, optimistic UI pagination, infinite scrolling, polling and WebSockets. So if this helped, drop a like, subscribe and let me know in the comment what to cover next. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.